everybody. My name is Colonel Benjamin Bennett. I'm the commander of the Wilmington District of the Corps of Engineers. It's an honor to be here with you all this evening to talk about the Folly Beach Coastal Storm Risk Management project that we're doing. Before I hand it over to Kent to talk about the project, I just want you to know that this is a very important project to the Wilmington District and myself personally. The Wilmington District, much like Folly Beach, is a coastal community. We understand the importance of coastal storm risk management, and I myself, I call Charleston home. My family lives here, went to school at the Citadel, and I've spent a lot of time on Folly Beach. So it is important to us, and again, it's an honor to be here to talk to you about the intricacies of this project. So I'm going to hand it over to Kent, the project manager, who's going to provide the details.
All right. Thank you, sir, and thank you everyone for giving myself and the Corps an opportunity to come down here tonight and talk about the feasibility study that we're doing on Folly Beach. It's been a pleasure and an honor to work with folks from the city as we move this project forward. My name is Kent Tranter. I'm the project manager for Wilmington District for this project. Couple of admin things before as we start out here. I appreciate everyone who is both here in person and everyone who's on Facebook Live, as well as the city's YouTube channel. Please, if you have a comment or a question, please feel free to enter those in the comments. And those, we've got folks here monitoring those. And we'll try and get to those questions, and if we don't get to them tonight, then we will look at them afterwards and reach out. If you could provide your name or contact information, and we'll get back to you with a response. So feel free. We're going to be showing some slides tonight, and I know they may be hard to see on the live streams. So they are on the city's website. If you go to the City of Folly Beach, under the scroller there, or the ticker that goes across, there's a click here for the slides. You can click on that and download those slides and follow along if you want, or save them to review later. But I just wanted you to know that those were there, so if you missed something tonight or you're not able to see them very clearly, those are available for folks to take a look at. You'll see at the end of the presentation tonight, we're going to show a web address where the draft report is located. You can go there and download the entire draft report and review it. There's also going to be an email on that slide, and you can take a look and send any comments or questions via that email. Those come to myself and the Charleston District of the Corps of Engineers. And if you provide your name and a contact, either email or other, then we will provide a response to those comments and questions as well. Okay, I think that's it. We'll go ahead and get started. Next slide, please. All right, the first slide is just an agenda slide, just to kind of show folks what we're going to be talking about tonight. The purpose of the meeting. We're going to talk a bit about the project, a little bit about the history, what the recommended plan is, talk about the schedule of the feasibility study moving forward, and then I'll show you that information on the last slide of where to go to review the draft study and provide any comments. Okay, so the purpose of the meeting, next slide. Purpose of tonight's meeting. Purpose of tonight's meeting is to describe the purpose and scope of the feasibility study, describe the draft report and recommended plan, and then provide that contact information for folks to provide feedback on the draft report and the recommended plan. I do just want to say that you'll hear us say recommended plan and draft report. None of this is final yet, so there are still opportunities to address anything that we need to in the report before it goes final and gets approved. So don't consider what we talk about tonight as the last opportunity. There's still more opportunity to tweak the plan as we respond to different questions and comments. So I do just want you to keep that in mind. This isn't set in stone yet, but it is, I think, a fairly good plan, and it probably won't change much, but there still is an opportunity there before the report goes final. Next slide, please. Okay, so this probably looks familiar to most folks. This is just a map to show the project limits, right? And this is essentially the length of Folly Beach. Existing projects, there is currently an existing project, as everyone knows. It's constructed in 1993. It's an ocean-facing 15-foot berm with no dune. It was first renourished in 2005 and again in 2014, and I believe there are two additional emergency nourishments in 2007 and 2018. So that, again, that existing project has been around since '93. It still has some time left on its 50 years, but we're approaching some funding limits, and that's kind of what generated this new feasibility study. Next slide. Okay, there it is. All right, again, this is just talking about the current existing project that you guys already have in place. And this is to show that 15-foot berm with no dune profile. Next slide, please. Okay. So the study's purpose. The study is to determine continued federal interest for coastal storm risk management in Folly Beach and recommend a plan that's technically feasible, economically justified, and environmentally acceptable. And that's what we set out to do. We want to come up with a recommended plan based on analysis and engineering judgment that gives the highest net benefits to the city and gives them the most protection. This is a complete reformulation. And what do I mean by reformulation? It means kind of all the options are on the table. We're going to look at new profiles, new borrowed sources. We redid the modeling, both the coastal engineering modeling and the economic modeling, to improve the project and reduce the flood damage at the lowest possible cost, providing the most benefit to the area. So that's our goal. The rest of this slide is just the authorities that we use to give us the study, and then the project sponsors, which of course is the city of Folly Beach, Charleston County, and the state of South Carolina. Next slide, please. Okay, this is both a study and a project timeline. So the study was initiated in 2018. It will be complete in 2021, roughly next October, so a little less than a year from now. Our goal is, and again it's a goal, and that's why on the slide it says potential. So after the report gets signed, it still has to go up to a Congress and get funding, get approved and get funding. Our goal is to get this project authorized in 2022, which would then potentially mean initial construction could start as early as 2024. With the potential end of the period of analysis 50 years from 2024, which would be 2070. So again, a lot of things can happen in that time frame. That's why it says potential on there. Those dates are not set in stone. A lot of things, anytime you're working with Congress, priorities go in, and it may not be 2022 or 2024, but that's what we're shooting for. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so Many of you might remember the Corps was down here in early 2018, and we did a scoping meeting where we talked about and gathered input for things that we wanted to see in this project. Following that meeting and Project had its first milestone meeting shortly after that, where they kind of narrowed down some of the different alternatives. The list of things that you see on here were those initial alternatives that came out of that process. So these are the things that the project delivery team looked at in terms of different options and different measures for the project. So revetments, burn and dune, all those things that are listed on here, including non-structural measures, structural buyouts, floodplain management, evacuation route, and community education. So these are all things that we really started to focus in on following that initial round of alternatives. Next slide, please. Okay, I know this is probably hard for folks to read, so I'm going to kind of walk through this. So you saw those list of alternatives in the previous slide. What we did is we gave these to our technical experts in coastal engineering and economics, and all the different aspects of the project delivery team, and ran them against all our models. And what we found was that the highest performing plan from this preliminary analysis was a 35-foot berm and a 15-foot dune for the southwest increment, which is approximately the entrance of the county park, to the northeast to about 1,000 feet north of Limehouse Drive, is what we're calling that southwest increment for that first increment. So a 35-foot berm, 15-foot dune up to that point. From Limehouse Drive further to the northeast, I think it's East Ashley Avenue. There the models came out with a 50-foot berm, 50, and a 15-foot dune. With a 12-year nourishment cycle for a total of four nourishments. And from that initial analysis, then we call optimized it, where we ran different variations of that plan against the models to see what we'd come up with. So that's kind of what those alternatives at the bottom are, with the exception of the first one, which is always the no action alternative. If we do nothing, and alternative 7, which is non-structural measures only, and alternative 6, which is the existing plan that the city currently has. 2 through 5 are all variations of that plan. So alternative 2 is the highest performing one. That's the one I just described to you. Alternative 3, very similar, but it extended that 50-foot berm further to the south, roughly to 12th Street East. Alternative 4 added an additional nourishment, a 5th nourishment, and alternative 5 added that increased berm, 50-foot berm, and added a 5th nourishment. So that's kind of what all that slide is saying. Hopefully you guys were able to follow that. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is kind of a breakout of what I just described with those alternatives 1 through 7. You'll notice on this slide, alternative 7 is no longer there. That was the non-structural, essentially the buyout option, and it became apparent fairly early on that the buyouts were fairly cost prohibitive, and so we eliminated that alternative from further consideration. And I think if you look over on the right-hand side, the average annual net benefit, you'll see that alternatives 2 and alternatives 3 really by far separated themselves from the other alternatives. And just a reminder, alternative 2 was the 35-foot berm, 15-foot dune, 50-foot berm, and 15-foot dune that was at Limehouse Drive. 3 was when that 50-foot berm was extended further to the south. So from there, Next slide, please. What we did is we focused in on those two alternatives, alternatives 2 and alternatives 3. And what we came out with as a recommended plan was alternative 3, which was that 50-foot berm extended a little further to the south. The benefits were nearly the same, the costs were nearly the same, and in this case, we put more sand on the beach, which is, provides more protection for the city. So that's the recommended plan that's in the draft report. 35-foot wide berm, 15-foot high dune from the county park entrance to 12th Street East, and then from 12th Street East up to East Ashley Avenue, a 50-foot berm and 15-foot dune. 4 total nourishments over the life cycle of the project, which is initial construction, and 3 nourishments, which is about once every 12 years. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is just a map representation of what I just described. The red is that southwest where the berm is 35 feet and the dune is 15, and then on the northeast side, the yellow line there is the wider 50-foot berm and 15-foot dune. Next slide. These are just profiles of the two, or a graphical representation of the two profiles. Go ahead, next slide. And the next slide. Okay. So this slide is here to illustrate to you that we are including recreational benefits. I know that recreational use of the beach here is important to the community, and we are taking that into account. There's a couple of variations here based on the models that we use. We're trying to use the higher one. We may not be able to sort it out before the report goes into its final form, but really this is just used to illustrate we are capturing those benefits. There were enough benefits captured from storm damage reduction that we put this on top of that, and that gives us our maximum amount of benefits for the project. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I mentioned at the start of the presentation that one of the things we're trying to do is reformulate the project, which means we look at all new borrow areas for the project. You'll see on this map that there's the historical borrow area, which we know is the Folly River. But we needed to ensure that we could guarantee there'd be 50 years worth of sand available to span the entire life cycle of the project. So in order to kind of plan for different eventualities, we wanted to find some offshore borrow sites as well, and that's what's represented on this graphic. So the big takeaway from this is that we need to ensure that there's 50 years of sand to cover kind of all of the different scenarios. And in order to do that, we wanted to make sure we had both inshore, which is the historical one, Folly River, and offshore alternatives. In case the Folly River or that borrow area wasn't available for whatever reason. So we found 2 offshore borrow areas, and we'll talk about them a little bit more on the next slide here. But I just wanted to show you where those are roughly located and what we looked at. Okay. There. So this is an analysis of the borrow areas, and the big takeaway here is this is a recommendation that's in the report on how we sequence those borrow areas. And I think it's extremely important to note here that these are recommended and not final, and they won't be final even after the draft report is signed. So what we do is we identify these borrow areas, and in the case of this project, you saw the Folly River and the 2 offshore borrow areas. The project delivery team makes a recommendation on what we think the sequencing for those borrow areas should be, but ultimately that decision will be made further down the road when we do design and construction. So there may be concern about the different borrow areas, which we completely understand, but I think it's important to note that decision on the use of each borrow area will be made at the time of construction or after nourishment based on given conditions. What I do think is important also is that we identify these borrow areas, that we have 50 years worth of sand. And I know, a lot of folks are probably concerned about these offshore borrow areas, and it's potentially less expensive to use the inshore ones. But I think it's important to include these from a funding standpoint. So we want to make sure that the project is authorized with enough funds to do the entire project. So I think it's important to capture these offshore borrow areas in the project. If we strictly went with one inshore that may be cheaper, it'll lower the cost, but we may not be able to, we may need those funds on the backside of the project. So the big takeaway, like I said, we identify some borrow areas. Once they're identified and in the report, they'll be available. And then the sequencing, which one is actually used for which nourishment will be determined at the time that nourishment based on the conditions. Okay. Next slide, please. Environmental compliance slide. Every federal project is required to look at impacts on the environment. The purpose is to give us a snapshot. The purpose of this slide is to give you a snapshot that environmental compliance is ongoing. It will continue to proceed as the report goes final. And then we'll have all the environmental compliance activities complete prior to the report going final. Okay, next slide. Parking and access. One of the things that the Corps of Engineers requires is that there be access to the beach. And I just want to commend the city. They've done an outstanding job of ensuring parking and access is available. And they've done an exemplary job of ensuring that no additional steps need to be taken. Plenty of access is available throughout the length of the project. Okay, next slide. All right, study schedule. We're here at the public information meeting, December of 2020. The next major milestone for the project is an agency decision meeting, which is our leadership giving us the approval to proceed with the final draft report. That'll happen sometime in the end of January. Between now and then is when we're going to address the comments that you guys submit, as well as agencies and a policy and legal review on the draft report. So then the report, the final report will be submitted in May. It'll go through some further reviews at our headquarters for eventual signing of the chief's report, like I mentioned before, in October of 2021. So just want to give you a timeline so you kind of knew what was going on, where we stood in that process, and when you can expect the report to be signed. As I mentioned before, once it's signed, then we start that whole process of getting approval from Congress and appropriating funds. Okay, next slide. Okay, wrapping up with the slides. So I just wanted to put out where the report can be found. I think it's on the city site website as well. If you click on the link, it'll take you there. It's also on the following Corps of Engineer website. Again, that's on the slides if you are looking at it, if you want to access that. And then you can submit questions or comments to the following email address, the Folly Beach Study at USACE.army.mil. Like I said, that email goes to the project delivery team. So all of your comments will come directly to us, and we'll see them And if you could provide your contact information, we will reach back out to you when we've had an opportunity to look at those comments and address them. Okay, I think that's the last one. There's one more slide. Yeah, that's it. So what I'd like to do now is open it up to questions or comments. Both folks here in the room and on Facebook, on YouTube, if you want to type in your question in the comments, we've got somebody here standing by monitoring that, and we can address those questions and comments. Okay.
I got one here.
Okay.
All right, we got one online, Kent, from Patty Newshutz from the Charleston County Parks, the CCPRC. She's concerned about the exclusion of the CCPRC properties at the west end of the island, which are shown out of the study area. And as infrastructure and development occur on these parcels, can they be added to the nourishment area in the future? The project time period appears to be continue to 2047. If CCPRC improves any of its properties over the next 27 years, can they be included in the project limits?
Okay, no, great question, and I understand the concern there. We can always go back and relook at things and change the project if we need to. So yeah, we will look at that, and we'll have to get back with the response. But right now, it does terminate because there was basically no benefits gained because there's no development there, which is why it wasn't included in the project. There's a transition zone that covers part of the county park, but not the entire thing. So we'll have to look at that and get back to you. Any other comments? Any questions?
I don't see any questions yet. Any new ones?
Give them a minute.
Wait 1 second. Any in the room? Questions?
Anything from YouTube? Okay. We'll pause a moment and give folks a chance to.
I'm William Farley, I'm on the city council, and I appreciate the detailed information you gave tonight. We, of course, followed Dr. Elko's report and her recommendations, but I guess the greatest concern that I have would be the span between renourishments being 12 years. We'd like to see that a little bit more frequently. Appreciate all the information. And also the use of the sand. By understanding, you got to identify 50 years worth, and that's why you went out. But the last renourishment was considerably less expensive, and it worked out as well as any sand that was pumped in offshore. So those would be two of the priorities that I would see from your report. But thanks for your effort.
And just to repeat the question, in case we couldn't hear that on Facebook Live, the question was in reference to the nourishment cycles being 12 years, and also just understanding that we are looking at the offshore borrow areas.
Yeah, I understand the city's concern, your concern, the city's concern about the renourishment cycle. It's where we can maximize that balance between cost of the project versus the benefits, which is the benefits are basically the damages prevented by the project. And so that's where we put that into the model. And I think on the one slide where you saw we added that fifth nourishment, and it basically cut the benefits in half. So yeah, that's understand the concern. That's kind of where that balance broke out.
I guess my experience has just been to watch how quickly it disappears. The renourishment's done. We have a very wide beach and a couple high tides, king tides after that, or a few storms offshore and that weren't even direct hits, and we lose a bunch. So I worry about what my personal experience has been, unscientific personal experience of observation, and the 12 years just concerned me.
I think what'll help too is that larger berm. It's going to be it's almost in the northeast, almost 3 times larger berm. So hopefully that'll slow some of that erosion down. But I absolutely understand your concern.
Great, thank you.
Nothing online yet.
All right, we'll, pause for a few more minutes and give folks a chance to type in if you're typing any comments if you're working on them.
And after we finish the live recording, we will post this on our Facebook page. So if there's any further comments that you want to submit here, we will make sure we get them to the project delivery team as well. Can you go back to that slide of the point of contact of where to send questions, and I'll just focus on that for a second. We'll close it out. Thank you.
All right, we'll give folks 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we'll wrap it up unless something comes up. Okay, well, again, I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to come down here and talk about this. Hopefully, I was able to kind of capture what's in that report and explain it a little bit maybe better than some of the language in the report. I think, I know we're excited about it. I think the city is excited about it. It's what I think is a great plan. It gets this berm and dune and a much larger berm, which I think will really be good for everyone. So again, thank you for the opportunity to come down here and discuss it. Absolutely feel free to reach out either through the comments on Facebook Live or on YouTube, or at the email address that's on that we gave out earlier, and we will address those concerns and get back to you as soon as we can. So again, thanks everyone for the opportunity, and have a good evening.